Yes, guys, how you doing? Welcome back to the Spurs Talk Show. How are you? Hope everyone is happy and healthy, doing the things they love. Apologies for no content yesterday. As you may or may not be aware, I was in all sorts of disrepute from, I'm feeling a little bit ashamed for my decisions on Sunday evening. But it is what it is. We're back here. We got a surprise guest. It was supposed to be Barnaby and myself, but Lubo's backdoored himself in. And of course, you can't say no to Lubo. He's too sweet, he's too cute, and he brings too much value. Before we get into it, guys, I want to say a massive apology for those of you who were in the chat at 1 a.m. this morning. Obviously, I set the stream up late last night and I didn't look at the timing of it, so I thought 1 p.m. was 1 a.m. whatever. So for those of you that stayed up late, I do apologise for that. Please do smash the like, smash the subscribe. Notification button should be squeezed. Comments should be dropped. Please get over to Barnaby at Barnaby Slater _. Link is in the description and in the title. Spurs 5 as well, as you know. Get over to support Lubo. We are available on all your podcast platforms. All of the links for all of my socials, Twitter, Instagram, all that stuff, and the various YouTube channels will be coming down in the StreamYard links. So if you haven't followed or subscribed, please do. When those stream elements, when those things pop up, please do click on them all and give us a follow and a rating. And finally, we are sponsored today, of course, by OK Jersey. They are always adding new clobber or new sports athleisure wear. I'm not going to ever tell you exactly what they do because and it's dangerous to say so, but you can find yourself a little cheeky 8% off already high quality and top prices by getting 8% off at checkout using code Sean. We've got a hell of a lot to get through. We've only got Barnaby for 55 minutes. Lubo might carry on with me for the second half of the show. Let's get into it, guys. Barnaby, how are you, mate? Great to see you, mate. Great to have you back on the show. How's things?
Yeah, always love coming on the show, mate. How are things? As I said to Lubo before we started, other than the obvious, everything's good. But the obvious is slightly overpowering at the moment. It's hard to really get to grips, I think, on a day-to-day basis, the reality of what's coming our way, I fear.
Yeah, 100%, mate, 100%. Hail Marys might have to be thrown in the next 24, 48 hours. And speaking of Hail Marys and prayers, just before I bring Lubo in, remiss of me not to say my condolences to the Tudor family for the sad passing of his father. Yeah. Obviously, his distractions, his attention is obviously with more important things than football. And so just from the Spurs Talk Show, and I'm guessing from Lubo and Barnaby as well, then, condolences and thoughts and prayers with what is a really sad time for him and his loved ones. Lubo, how are you, my man? You okay?
Yes, I'm all right, thanks. I'm okay. When did I see you? I saw you about 14 hours ago. We came off stream, didn't we? So, yeah. Had a nice sleep, nice breakfast. All good here.
You've had a nice sleep, have you?
Yeah, had a nice sleep, nice breakfast. Yeah, it's all been good. All been good. Working from home this morning.
Does Tottenham not disrupt your sleep?
Sometimes it takes me a while to get to sleep after a show because the adrenaline's running. But I think it was I'd had a day just to process everything from after the match. So I went to bed last night, and I was fairly relaxed. It was there were no tear ups last night. It was nice and calm, and I think
it might have been a tear up had I been on from the start. I'm glad I missed the first 50 minutes. Yeah.
And you just had to come on, obviously.
Well, no, I had to. I was dozing in bed, and then I woke up, and I was like, it's 8:30 or whatever, and I had about 8 different people message me going, "Why aren't you on Spurs 5? They're coming for you." I mean, why are they coming for me? What have I done? They went, "Oh, you had the audacity to go to the parade." I was like, "What? Me and 20,000 other people?"
No,
and you had the audacity to call out the negativity or whatever in the fan base after. And I was like, my point on this whole thing was, if you're stripped of any reason to be positive about Tottenham, which we all have been for the last, 6 months or whatever, then when in isolation, right, the Liverpool game, it was a step in the right direction. It's a rarity that you get something out of the Anfield, reason to be positive. And then I see the kind of the negativity pursued, and I was like, it's fine if you want to be that kind of like, if that's where you feel. I'm not telling anyone how to be or how to act or whatever, right? But like, there's only certain things you can control in life, right? You can control what you do and what you say and your actions. Yes. You can't control how other people react to those actions.
Sure.
Right. But to be offended by people being offended by your particular persuasion. You can't control that.
No.
And me personally, I find it like I find it difficult to kind of go, yeah, I can get on board other people going, forget about Liverpool, forget about Madrid. It's still as dog shit as it always was. Maybe that's true. It's proved to be true. But at the same time, in isolation, in the moment, if you want to be someone that finds reasons to be positive, then find a reason to be positive after Madrid, after Liverpool.
Sure.
Barnaby, let me ask you, my man. Oh, sorry, Lubo, you were going to say
I was
something.
just going to say, all Stel said was just to explain your absence, that you were still at the party, at the parade party. And,
yeah, that's why I should have watched before I joined in, because the way it was described to me was like, there's point scoring going on, there's I told you so's, and there's a whole new energy. And Butler, you're not there to create the anti-echo chamber. And they're coming, and the chat are coming after you. And I was like, oh, fuck them. Fuck everybody. I'm on then. I'm going to come in and start throwing haymakers.
And then, well, but first of all, you said you're still at the parade partying. But if you're not, if you finish, Sean, let us know. Come on and let us know. And
it's somewhat half true. The parade was fantastic.
There's people in the chat saying, Sean, have you got home yet? Sean, are you still drunk? Sean, have you got your car out the yard yet? So it was... you just
the answer to those questions are as follows. If someone's asking, Sean, are you still drunk? The answer is probably, because I usually am. I'm usually somewhere between tipsy or drunk. 2 is I had to wait until I was sober before I could get the car out. And 3 was the parade. I enjoyed the parade. Barnaby, let me ask you, mate, before we get into the game, before we get into the state of play, the parade thing has entirely split the fan base, right? For some reason... Some people have chosen to describe the parade as as the worst decision that Tottenham fans could have possibly done. It's some sort of representation of, I don't know, condoning the ownership. It's some sort of way of presenting a tolerance of it. And I don't think any of that is like in the minds of the 20,000 people. I don't think any of them are sitting there going, oh, you know what, I'm okay with the ownership. By doing this, I think they're focusing on a different thing. And that thing was, we're facing the precipice of disaster. Any little thing that can help get the players over the line to rally up here today is worth a shot. And I don't see where there's a problem in that. I think it should be supported and encouraged.
No, listen, Sean, you're making the dangerous mistake here of being commonsensical. People don't like that. Stop using your common sense. It's madness. Nobody wants that. Listen, what else have we got if we haven't got community and alcohol? Take, and then if you take that away from it, of course, it's a positive thing to try and get together, having seen what Everton, and Everton aren't the only club who've done it, but having seen how Everton have actually dragged themselves out of the flames by getting this community together before games to try and do anything they can to push players to get an extra 5%, an extra 10%, anything you can do to try and get a better performance out of a group of players in our case who most of them have been injured, but when they're not injured, or whoever comes out on the pitch anyway, cannot function under any kind of pressure. And so an attempt to try and take that pressure off them, I think, is good. There is an argument to suggest that maybe it actually heaped a bit more pressure on them. But I don't think that is anything. If that is the case, and you'd have to speak to a sports psychologist to really get into the nuts and bolts of that. Even if that is the case, that's not the fault of the fans. It's not the fault of the fans for trying to get something positive going before an absolute 6-pointer. In a season where, like I said, we have absolutely crumbled at home in pretty much every single game other than Burnley on the first day and Brentford, who didn't turn up that one time. Anyone else, we've just absolutely crumbled. And therefore, I think I'm all for both the fans and the club to do anything they can to try and get an extra 5%. One thing I'd say is, I don't think in hindsight it helped necessarily, but also I would still say to the fans, keep doing it. Keep trying to do it because also if we had the best, I'd say, of certainly like 15 minutes to 45, apart from the goal they scored. And if we'd scored a goal from one of those corners, I think that kind of goodwill would have raised the roof on the stadium, and I think it would have pushed us potentially to get a second and maybe win that game. Certainly not lose that game. But the problems we have right now, as and I'm not telling you anything you don't know, but it's when we go 1-0 down, or when something bad happens, we do not have what it takes to react. And that,
as fans or as the players?
No, as players. I mean, as players.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I think as players, I think more recently and on Sunday, the fans have been trying to, support them after we've gone 1-0 down, and that's been really good to see. But there does then come a point where there's a feeling of desperation throughout the entire club, from players to fans to everybody, where we're like, shit, we've got to do this. We've got to do it really quickly or we're going to lose again. And I would say, and I'm sure we'll get into this, but I would say the style of play that we are now trying under Tudor, which is 4-4-2, direct ball, long ball, if you want to put it in old Championship manager parlance, which we were also kind of doing slightly differently formation-wise, but certainly same kind of direct ball into channels under Thomas Frank. My overall feeling at this point is we are going down whatever happens, right? So what they need to do, and I'm sure I'm jumping ahead a few subjects here, but what they need to do to try and pull the very last lever of possibility is bring someone in who's going to let those boys play, because they're not allowed to play, and they're all designed to play football, and they're not allowed to, and they're all chasing shadows, and it's not working. So we are going down anyway. So why don't we go down swinging and try and play some football? But I even if that happens now, even if they bring in a vibesman, and like you said at the beginning, terrible news for Igor Tudor and whatever. So I'm having this conversation as if that bad news to him never happened, really.
Sure.
But we've got to a point where they have to try and bring in some kind of, vibes guy, the kind of guy who I railed against probably 3 months ago. But they've got to try something where you get your arm around the shoulder, you plonk the mayonnaise on the table, and you just say, play some football, try and make it happen. You're all better than these last two managers have given you credit for. And I made I alluded to a Harry Redknapp reference there. I wouldn't rule him out, but I'll tell you how mental it's gone now. I wouldn't rule out trying to bring Ange Postecoglou into fucking Winston Churchill our way to some kind of results. Because at this point, frankly, at this point, we, tactics are kind of out the window. Just try and let them play. We're going to concede goals with 1 or 2 passes down the middle anyway, like we did against under Ange. I'm not saying it's possible. I'm not saying he'd take it. I'm not saying it's likely, but I'm saying I think we've got to the point of no return where, frankly, anything is an option. I hear some people saying Ryan Mason. The way I look at Ryan Mason is like, maybe he knows the players, but if you're going to bring in Ryan Mason, you might as well bring in Ange, because Ryan Mason has worked under Ange, and Ange at least has that kind of Winston Churchill about him. Ryan Mason doesn't have the Winston Churchill about him. So that's my that's where I'm at with it. I'm basically at the stage where I'm like, I will take anything right now. I do, however, think if you bring in a man called Adolf Hutter now, we might as well all give up being Spurs fans forever, because as if
where are your papers? Where are your papers?
If we haven't been the meme club of all time this season anyway.
By the way, is his name actually? I know it's Addy, but is it actually Adolf?
Yes.
I thought, that there was that joke. I think was it a Ricky Gervais joke saying that name really died off. I think it was Ricky Gervais joke.
I believe it to be the case.
There's still people that were born in the 50s, 60s, and 70s that were called Adolf in Germany. Unbelievable. Yeah, that's just comedy value. Listen,
but if they do that, I think but if they do that and they bring him in and make us even more of a meme club than we already are, then it's like, at that point you start looking at the Vinay Venkatesham situation. Him, he used to work for Arsenal. You're just like, I know it's a meme, but is he actually an agent? Like, this is mad. Like the decision making from the top is mad.
Yeah, and there's another communications girl in there as well that's like ex-Arsenal. So there's 2 different ways I want to ask the next question, because I think I want to sort of push back on the. It doesn't look like
Lubo liked what I was saying.
No, he'll be back in a minute. He'll be back in a second. In fact, let me go to two men for a second. I'll bring him back in. Before I get to that, I want to, because there was a lot, like you said, I want to go into both areas. The first area you said about the players being better than they are, right? So this is an argument that I've been pushing for a long time. I've been saying it, right? When I've been listening to people telling me the players just aren't that good, the players are shit, the squad is terrible. Like maybe they're not as good as the teams we've had in the past, but they're better than what we're showing.
Yeah,
I have to again. I'm happy to sort of own what I've said in the past. I'm not going to sort of walk away from what I've said, but adjust. Maybe I've been wrong about that. Maybe I haven't. Maybe I have. But the question I have for you is, when you look at another team like Nottingham Forest, right? who are also struggling, who were below us in the league, or they were below us in the league right before the game. Their 11 yesterday versus our 11 yesterday. I've got to be honest. I genuinely think that there is no discernible difference in quality between the two centre-backs. Arguably, I would say that Murillo is a far more well-rounded centre-back for a team that doesn't play high-line, high-possession football. I think Micky van der Ven has been exposed as nowhere near the standard of player that we all thought he was. As soon as you get to play in a system that requires a bit more defensive consistency, aerial challenging, positional sense, adaptability. He looked brilliant because he was very, very exceptionally talented at two divisions of his game, his recovery tackles and his recovery pace. You take that away from a guy because you're not playing in that high line. He is bang average at so many other departments of defending. Murillo isn't. Milenkovic in a high line would be exposed, but in a low line or in a mid block, he's absolutely fine and composite ease. I don't think there's a discernible difference between Neco Williams at left back, who's actually a right back playing out a left back, and say a Jed Spence who's doing the same thing, or a Destiny Udogie who's completely, I know he's unfit, but at the moment, if you had to make me pick a left back out of the two clubs to be as a combined 11, I would choose Williams. I also would make the argument that in the situation that both teams are in, i.e. relegation battles, I would pick Ollie Aina over Pedro Porro all day long. Pedro Porro is a good horse for a certain course, and that course is not the way that Tottenham play football at the moment with a mid to low block. He's someone that will no doubt thrive in a high possession football. There's no debate about the midfield. Ibrahim Sangare and his name's escaped me. The English
Elliot
player.
Anderson.
Elliot Anderson. No question are better than Archie Gray and Pape Sarr. And for me, as much as I'll back Mathys Tel as being a player that I don't think is anywhere near as good as as some of the fan base near as bad as some of the fan base make him out to be, Barnaby, I would take probably Hudson-Odoi over him. And certainly on the right, we haven't really got a right winger at the moment. But if Kudus on his day when he's up for it is fine. But I also very much like the Nottingham Forest right winger, and I also much prefer Igor Jesus to any of our options up the top. So the question mark, I guess, is if you're comparing the 11s and both teams are in a relegation battle, then is it fair to say that either both teams they have got better players than their form presents themselves or makes the argument for, or maybe the standard of football in the Premier League is just higher than we give it credit for, and these players are actually bang average and mediocre? Maybe I've been wrong all along about the standard of players that we have at the football club.
Yeah, look, I think it's a mix of a lot of things. Obviously, the injuries ruling out any of our creativity, and then him not picking Xavi Simons for a home game means that the kind of blend for me, the blend of the team doesn't allow itself to look as good as that Forest team. I have to say, when I looked at the Forest team before the game, I looked at it and thought, oof, I think they're a little bit better equipped for this kind of 6-pointer than Spurs are. I mean, it comes back to what I said earlier again as well, is I don't think any of this Spurs squad have been designed other than Polinia for this kind of drudgery in terms of the style of football we're being asked to play and we are trying to play. Other than, I guess, maybe Solanke and Richarlison suit direct ball a little bit and crosses coming in the box. But Solanke, who I think is a far better number 9 than Richarlison in terms of holding the ball up and link-up play, he did not look fit at the weekend at all. If you look at how Richarlison was pressing and how Solanke wasn't, the only two things I could come up with was that Solanke either wasn't fit, and bear in mind he'd had a hip injury before, or he'd been asked to kind of purposely not press whilst Richarlison had to, because he was sitting off the whole time in the 10 position. That surprised me. The other thing that really surprised me in terms of what Tudor decided to do was to play that long ball 4-4-2 against Liverpool when they had Joe Gomez in the back four. I think worked out well for us, and we were worthy of that point, even though it was only a late equaliser. But to play 4-4-2 long ball, direct ball against Milenkovic and Murillo, I thought was absolute madness. And it was clear to anyone, that what we needed to do was try and get the ball in the pockets to a Simons or a Porro playing in that slightly inside right position he can get into and create kind of through ball opportunities or situations from that. So I thought that was madness. And then you mentioned Neco Williams. I'm really glad you did, because I think Neco Williams for me, is a perfect example of the weird, difficult situation that Tottenham as a club are in. And by club, I mean, you know, the very top to the management, to the players and the fans. Because for me, if Tottenham in the last year or 2 years had signed Neco Williams, I think the Spurs fan base would have kicked up a fuss and said he is not good enough for where we want to go, right?
100%.
And when we played on Sunday, I looked at Neco Williams and thought we could do with 11 Neco Williamses on this park, because
he's wildly underrated, Barnaby. He's wildly underrated.
I think he's a good player. I'd call him like a 7 out of 10, an honest pro, but he works his nuts off and he's motivated no matter what game it is. However, Spurs as a club and as a fan base, and I'd include myself in this as well. I'm not saying I'm any different to a lot of us, but I would say we look down on the kind of players we're sometimes linked with because we don't think they're good enough. Well, listen, it's all coming home to roost because we haven't bought enough of those players, and we've invested that money in young players who aren't ready to step up to that situation. And as a result, we are going to get relegated. And at that point, you know, the fan base are going to go mad again because we're going to have to ship out all of the players over 100 grand a week, and we're going to have to buy in, believe it or not, as much as some of us, I think, are thinking at times, oh, it might be quite fun to see Will Lancashire up front and Jamie Donnelly play and Mikey Moore come in. We are going to have to buy, and it will happen, championship experienced players. And they will bring in a manager who will be like Scott Parker, or if we're lucky, Kieran McKenna, but it might be Scott Parker. And they're going to bring in players who are like war horses of championship experience. And Spurs fans will be like, we're too good for that. But we're going to need players like that to get out of the championship. And as bleak as it sounds, that is what's going to happen. Unless some fucking miracle, some miracle worker comes in. And I don't know. I know people are angry at me for saying Ange or Harry Redknapp, or, I mean, I cannot believe it, but maybe Tim Sherwood or something. I don't know if they're going to make a decision like that. But it would need to be a miracle, whoever they bring in, because it's happening. And if we stick with Tudor, it's happening. So, you know, our entitlement, I think, to some degree, has massively affected us. I will say the injuries have affected us as well, and some bad managerial appointments, and some just 6-7 years of terrible decision-making from the top all the way down. And listen, as you know, Sean, me and you have always been on a similar page of be careful what you wish for, wanting Daniel Levy out. But I'm saying, you know, he has made some bad decisions, but it turns out I think a lot of his decisions were keeping us afloat. And
yeah, of course, I think he was the glue that held this paper boat.
Him, Harry Kane, and Son Heung-min. Yeah,
100%. Lubo, just before I bring you in, because again, we're sort of the conversation does want to flow into like what do we do next, but just on the notion of like, are the players for me? By the way, I see Sava in the chat. Big up to you, Sava. I didn't get a chance to say I was so busy starting the show. Thank you for the redirect, my man. Appreciate you as always. And appreciate everyone for smashing the like button. Apparently, the like game is poor. Smash the like, smash subscribe, notification buttons, and hype, guys, hype. The notion for me, like when I saw the game, I saw the 11 yesterday. I'm looking at the fact that Forest are struggling with relegation, and they've got a team of 11. Yes, we've got players out, and they don't have as many out, but we're starting to get some players back. But for me, I agree with you, Barnaby, that there is a difference between sort of tangible facets of someone's game and intangibles. And I think Neco Williams, not only are we talking about the passion and the fight and the ability to drag out 7 out of 10 performances, one of the things that I think is massively understated in a fullback is their positional sense. Positional awareness, understanding where the threats come from and being able to adapt to them and do your best to get yourself out of trouble it's not something that you can see on a heat map. It's not something that you can see in a duels completed. It's not something you can see necessarily. You can make indirect inferences from like aerial duels or one or whatever else. But you have to it's something that's intangible. And for me, Neco Williams and Ollie Aina, and Pedro Porro doesn't have this part of his game at all, and he won't. Emerson Royale, believe it or not, again, people hated Emerson Royale, but Emerson Royale's positional sense at the back post was his best quality, absolute best quality. But Neco Williams is a player, not only does he have the fight and the passion, but he is someone that understands how to be a left back and understands where the threats reside and how to get himself out of trouble. The amount of times that I've seen him in games just being in the right place at the right time, and it's such a disproportionately high amount of times relative to the average that you can't put that down to luck. You have to put that down to someone that's very excellent at a part of the game that isn't necessarily like quantifiable, if that makes sense. So yeah, listen, I just think that maybe I've been wrong for a long time on this. I do think the players are capable of more. I do think the players, when you sign a lot of young players and you throw them into an environment which is toxic and poor energy, I think that those people are not going to have, like, their wings are clipped a little bit. It's like touching a butterfly. You know, it's never going to fly if you ruin its environment. And I think that Tottenham currently don't have the environment to enable these players to really grow. Lubo, let me bring you on this one, because I do want to go back and ask and push back a little bit on the Ange Postecoglou comment that's going to be made quickly. Yeah.
Take out
Take your time.
Take out Austin and Gunter, who have not played this season. Take out Byfield, that's had a couple of substitution appearances. We've got 28 players, and there's only 4 kids. So I'm not too sure what the whole thing about kids is. Take out Tel, Odegaard, Gray, and Berghvall. Kinsky, maybe. I mean, he's played twice. You got 23 players that are proper, that are older, more established professionals. So it's nothing to do with the kids. There's 23 players here. You look at Vicario, Dragusin, Danso, Polinia, Simmons, Bissouma, Richalison. Where are we? Romero, Udogie, Solanke, Kudus, Gallagher, Porro, Spence, Bentancur, Ben Davis, Van der Ven, Moani. There's 20 odd players there. And we're talking about we're focusing on kids. I'm sorry, I disagree. The problem is
not focusing on kids. On the point of our kids are able to fly. You can't argue that our transfer strategy in the last 24 months has been a little bit shaped towards younger, youthful players, right?
It has, but I feel that the transfer strategy has been incomplete because Spurs have had the money to go and buy the more established players. They've chosen not to spend it. And that's been the problem. They have the money, Barnaby. This has gone on for 25 years. They've always worked within the parameters that they want to work in. Every other manager stretches themselves. This lot have never stretched themselves. They're not interested. They'll risk averse. They'll go so far, and that's it. Because going from there to there does not guarantee success.
I agree. I do agree with that, Lubo, to an extent. And certainly back when it comes to kind of 2017, 18, 19, that would be the case because we were challenging for the league and we were challenging for the Champions League. However, unfortunately, that coincided with when we were building the new stadium. And as I've said many times, despite the fact that Daniel Levy talked about how there was transfer money ring fence for that stadium, it's clear he had to say that because otherwise the vultures would sniff around our best players, Dele Alli, Harry Kane, etc. There was no money for transfers then. That's clear to me. Now, what I'd say since then is that as we've dropped further and further down, I do think there has been, and you're taking this mainly from rumours that you hear and then the players you end up buying. I do think there has been a desire to buy the better players. However, we are sniffing around those players with Manchester United, Arsenal, Manchester City, Chelsea, Liverpool, to name but 5, who, yes, I agree with you in that they've all been willing to pay more wages. So that's one reason they're not going to come to us. But the other reason they're not going to come to us as well is because we're a bit of a laughing stock and we're going downhill and we're not as good.
Yes.
So a bit of it. That's where it comes
near as attractive. We're like Jordan, Katie Price. We're just not as attractive as we used to be, despite all the work we put into presenting ourselves in that regard.
Sure, us and United went in and bid 50 million for Semenya in the summer, and Bournemouth said, "We'll sell them to you for 7. We'll take 70." We didn't bid. We didn't raise the bid. We could have had Semenya before.
But I think, can I just say, sorry to jump in, Sean, I think that's a great example. I think that's a great example because it's very obvious to me, I think, and this is my theory, but it's clear that Semenyo has been in a conversation with Manchester City for a couple of years at least. And Man City say to these players, and some of the other clubs may do as well, but they say, sign a new contract there with this release clause, and then we will get you out of that release clause when it works best for our financial fair play. And for Man City, it was this January because Semenyo had such a good season, etc., etc. So Man City and Chelsea, I'd say to a degree as well, they have such control, and that's why I'd put asterisks. I love putting asterisks next to their names now because they're cheating the system. But they have such control over the transfer system of these top-level players that Tottenham are swimming in the waters with West Ham, with those middling clubs to try and get players, and you see that now. The players
By
at Spurs
the way, Barnaby. By the way, just on that, right? I completely agree, echo everything you're saying. There's a lot of like hypothesis and supposition in there because we don't know. But like, I agree with you in principle about the tactics that go on. I definitely 100% agree that when you try and fight with the big boys, for years and years and years, I have been told by the people that were ENIC out, oh, the reason why we don't sign £100 million players or whatever is because we don't pay the wages. Well, like, again, I've always maintained this, and no one can accuse me of like being a reverse engineer or a Monday morning quarterback here. I have always said, even if you can offer all the gold you can eat, if that was the only factor that drove players to play for certain clubs, everybody would be in Saudi Arabia. Everybody would have been in China 7 years ago. Everybody would have been in Russia 15 years ago when they went through their own little kind of period of doing that stuff. It didn't work out. Some players are mercenaries and go and do that sort of thing. They're not the sort of players that you want anyway, because they're there for the economic reasons, not for the draw, right? But in Tottenham's case, we masquerade as someone that's put into that top 6 conversation, but we really haven't been in terms of trophies. And by the way, the two teams that are the biggest culprits of manufacturing their own success, let's be honest, they are like the Chelsea situation is clear as day that they cheated. They're elite cheaters. They got away with it. You can blame Daniel Levy for not seeing the wood for the trees around the rules, whatever you want, that's fine. But in terms of Semenyo specifically, again, I'm not Monday morning quarterbacking here. Just like I was, and again, I don't want to be this guy. I hate being the guy that was like trying to remind people of what I said years ago because I think it's shameless. But like, not only was I like early on the Ademola Lookman thing, but Semenyo in the summer, I was like, you have to go and get Semenyo. And everybody in the chat told me that Savio was far better than Semenyo. What are we doing? Semenyo's a one-season wonder. He's the next Dominic Solanke. I was like, I'm sorry, I disagree. And now, as soon as the season started and he came out of the traps hot and scored, 5 goals in 4 games, whatever it was, everybody jumped on board the Semenyo, but nobody wanted, and like the people in the chat, and not these people in the chat specifically, but people in the chat can move their opinions because they're not memorable, because they're not like you, like there's not like a fucking archive of what everyone said. What we say, people use against us later if we change our minds, right? Or if we adapt our opinions. But there was so little support when I was saying go and get Semenyo in the summer. But so I agree with Barnaby. Semenyo didn't want to come to Tottenham then, and he was never going to come now in January. We offered him 50, according to reports, again, don't know if it's true, but we offered him 50 grand a week more than Man City did. Why? It's not about like, yes, offering higher wages is important, but it's piecemeal compared to the draw that you can offer as a football club.
But Sean, he only signed the contract that had the 65 million release clause in the summer after Spurs and United had bid. Yeah. We missed our chance.
He didn't want to come.
How do we know?
Because the reports were out there. The reports were out from a year earlier that Tottenham were looking at him in the summer of late 23.
But I think as well, one of the main reasons he didn't want to come is because Man City were in his ear saying, you stay where you are now for 6 months or a year and we'll take you then. And that's the same. Look at all those players they bought. Look at Gay. Look at him. They're doing it in a Real Madrid-esque way where they do it so they can conform to financial fair play. See yourself down, sign a deal with a release clause that works for us, and we'll bring you in. And they do bring them in.
Explain Lookman then. Could have bought him. 40 million euros.
Yeah, I mean, I think on top of that, you also then have to add in that I don't think Johan Lange is a good judge of players who are ready for the first team now. I think there's an argument to say he's a better judge of young players who have talent. But I listen. You know, the Johan Lange situation is a whole other conversation.
Let's just quickly. I want to just because I know we're short on time. We've only got 25 more minutes. If that's Barnaby, if you've got any more time, mate, I'd love to be able to extend it. But if not, we can do it again later on this week, buddy.
I'll come on any time, but it's just got to be lunch times or after school at the moment. Sorry.
No problem, mate. I completely understand, but I completely understand. The other thing I want to push back on in that first answer was about Ange Postecoglou. I understand there's a lot of people in the fan base, a lot of Australians. If you're watching Australia, you're up late, go to bed. But with regards to Ange Postecoglou, as an option, as a Hail Mary, he's as good or as bad, as dangerous, as risky as anyone else. And he might be the guy that can motivate and get the guys back on side. And he might be able to get us out of trouble. My question mark is not so much around, is he a good option or a bad option? It's after calling the club out on the overlap, after essentially throwing the club under the bus to protect his own, in my opinion, to protect his own reputation in a softball interview where he didn't really acknowledge too many of his own faux pas. Do you think that he has done as much damage to that opportunity as potentially Harry Redknapp has, when Harry Redknapp was asked on TalkSport about whether he'd come back, and he said, absolutely, of course I would. Daniel Levy phoned me and told me that if he was still in the football club, he'd have got me until the end of the season. Absolutely terrific. Like those sorts of, like, coming out in public and essentially either throwing the club under the bus or saying that the guy that's been frog marched out of the football club would have you in, have both of those two people queered their pitch with a chance.
Can I give you my theory on that Harry Redknapp interview? I think Daniel Levy did call him, and I think he called him because he knew that Harry Redknapp would then not be able to stop himself from telling TalkSport that Daniel had called him, and therefore making Daniel look better to Spurs fans. I think that's exactly what happened there.
And Harry fell for it. And it would kibosh his chance of a job, because obviously the Lewis family will look at that and think, well, we're not having Harry now.
Yeah. Listen, in terms of what you're saying about Ange and the overlap and throwing the club under the bus, I would say he's only thrown the club under the bus as much as they threw him under the bus by sacking him. So on that basis, I also think at the time he did the overlap, he didn't think for a second that he would ever have a chance of managing them again. I don't think he necessarily does have a chance of managing them again. I think what I'm talking about when I mention Ange, and I'm not rowing back on what I said, I promise you, but when I talk about Ange, I almost talk about him as an example of how bad things have fallen, where now I'm just like, get in that, you could potentially get that guy in as a Winston Churchill figure, even though I still think he's the wrong manager for Spurs. I still think his tactics have been found out. I still think that it probably wouldn't work. But at this point, what would I go for? Someone who actually can get into like the heads of the players, the mentality, and say to them, oh, look, mate, you're doing it for your family, and your dad's dead, and your dad's dead, and all that stuff, which kind of to some degree might work. Especially over the options that it looks like we might have, including Adolf Hutter, Ryan Mason. They're going for Roberto De Zerbi, who clearly doesn't want to come, probably forever, but certainly not right now.
Hey, they are wanting me more than anybody else, and they keep phoning me. I don't know what he sounds like. I just do the Italian accent.
We conceded 13 goals in 5 league games under
Tudor,
and another 7 in the two European games. We've let in 20 in 7 games. We will probably let 40 in the next 7 games if Postecoglou took over. He has no idea how to defend. The guy is completely clueless. It is.
Okay, but is there any merit?
We have no idea how to defend now anyway. So should we maybe just go for something where the players might be inspired to try and score some goals? That's all I'm saying. We're literally in the shit. Is there like some Hail Mary? You said, Sean. It's the perfect description for it. We need a fucking Hail Mary, and I don't think the Hail Mary now is some people saying Sean Dyche. I'm like, we've just had 2 Sean Dyches. Thomas Frank is Sean Dyche. Igor Tudor is Sean Dyche. These players need to hear something different desperately, and it's too late anyway. Probably that's why I'm saying I'm not disagreeing with anyone who says Ange will concede loads of goals or Ange is the wrong man. I agree he's the wrong man, but is he the wrong man who might just summon up some magic?
Lubo, is there a merit? Is there a merit to the argument, right? Without naming specific managers, is there a merit? Because I think there is a merit to the argument that Barnaby's essentially espousing, which is if we stay as we are, we go down. If we try again with something similar to what we have done in the last 2 managers, we're going down.
Correct.
So, and maybe like the reality is that, we huffed and we puffed against Forest for the first 40 minutes, but we had no breath in our lungs to blow the door down, right? We didn't. Right. I agree with Barnaby. I said it on my post-match show when I was smashed out of my skull in the pub. I said the idea that I actually watched that 6-minute video back, right? And I was actually, Butler, you don't sound like a complete fucking idiot. Maybe a little bit sort of embarrassing, but not too bad. Is there merit to the argument that if you're going to throw the Hail Mary has to look a little bit different than the last couple of prayers that we've placed, right? And maybe it should look like a manager that just says, look, you can't fucking defend. Just go and see if you can play football. Because we're going down anyway, aren't we? But we're not going to win. When are we going to win? What game are we going to win?
Sean, it's not a definite. We're hurtling towards relegation, but we are still, for however bad we've been, 2 wins in 21, no wins in 13. We're still outside the relegation zone. So we've just got to match West Ham point for point over the next 7 games. That's what we've got to do. And you look at it and you think, well, where's the next win going to come from? Bring someone in who knows what they're doing, someone who's calm, someone who's clinical, someone who can organise a team like Carrick did at Man United. Find that person and bring them in. Don't go mad.
When you say organise the
Don't
team,
want any mavericks. Don't want any mavericks like Postecoglou. Enough of mavericks. 22 defeats last year.
Sure.
If it hadn't have been for the fact that the bottom three were so crap, would have been relegated last year.
Sure.
So
I completely agree.
don't bring him. He is the last person.
I'm not advocating. To be clear, I'm not advocating for him either. But I don't hate. Just quickly, someone say about. Let me just quickly round off. I don't hate Barnaby's idea, which is essentially not that he's not saying necessarily, Ange, unless I won't put words in your mouth, but to find a manager that can allow them to play a little bit more.
Sure.
Yeah. Lubo, can I just ask you though, can you throw out a potential name who is that kind of calm, steady, what you're asking for, person who you think, the players could unite behind potentially?
I would bring in two managers. I'd bring in Redknapp and Sherwood to work together. I'd have Defoe coaching as well. He's got his badges now. They all know the club as well. They will all be respected, and they'll bring some discipline and unity, I think, to the club. Bring them in. We've got a chance.
Listen, I don't disagree with that. I don't disagree with that. And I said at the beginning of the thing, I was like, get someone in who can slam the Mayo down on the table and get the players behind him. I don't disagree with that, probably arguably without Sherwood, I would say, unless Sherwood is allowed to kind of bring through the academy players, because maybe he did. Do you remember when Sherwood was manager the first time, the interim manager, and suddenly there was a game away at Southampton and suddenly Nabil Bentaleb was playing, and I swear none of us had a clue who Nabil Bentaleb was. I mean, when I say none of us, I talk about those of us who are not kind of youth team tacticos, which I'm not. Now, if Sherwood was able to come in and say, well, actually, there's some players in the academy who I think are going to try their asses off way more than some of the players in the first team, then maybe I'd have him as part of it. But other than that, but I would say, and Lubo, to give you an idea of just how reactive I've become and how much I've flip-flopped, and I'm happy to admit that. I know fans hate it, but it's the reality of where we are. I promise you, I was the first person to be like, when we wanted Frank sacked and Tudor came in, I was the first person who was like going, you cannot get Harry Redknapp in because he's the king of the jungle. He's a reality show star. He's 80 years old. And now I'm telling you, Lubo, I would take Harry Redknapp like a shot, because I think like he is the equivalent of Ange to me, but in that he's 80 years old rather than, being tactically inept. It's a Hail Mary. It's what I'm willing to go for. I'm not anti it.
No, listen, I've just seen Scott's comment. We have had enough bad managers who are managing constantly. So if you bring people in, doesn't matter they've not had any experience managing in the last 10 years. If they're good, they're good. You use their experience to your benefit. I mean, you can't buy experience, and you get young managers and you see lots of mistakes. You're right, Tudor for me. Another Dyche. We spoke to Dyche. Dyche wanted a permanent. He wouldn't come on an interim. I mean, can you imagine how bad that would have been?
Can I ask a question to both of you and to the people in the comments? Why do you think this board are so determined not to do that? By which I mean the kind of Harry Redknapp, ex-Spurs player team, whatever. Why are they so determined that they think that is the wrong thing to do? Because because that's the one option that has been totally stuffed down our throats.
But how do you know? Like we make the presumption, right? And listen, I'm probably more than any other content creator guilty of doing what I'm now espousing we shouldn't be doing, right? Whenever Give Me Sport or Football Insider or Graham Bailey or Ben Jacobs or all these guys, whenever they roll out, the guy Alex Crook, these donuts who. They made a complete career out of talking absolute bollocks. They've managed to forge some level of reputation, some level.
So have we, mate.
Being a transfer. No, of course, right? I'm just a bottom feeder off of their bollocks, right? I am a giant bottom feeder. My channel has grown to where it has from every time Graham Bailey or one of these other donuts says something. Tottenham will go back to the side. Tottenham are in pursuit of Rodri. Tottenham in pursuit of whoever, right? Insert top class player here. Press record. Bang out a 10, 15-minute video, right? Loads of people love it. It's all bollocks, right? I used to believe it because I thought there was some chance of it happening, and you rather say it than not say it, right? It's part of the game. But they're wrong 100% of the time, or 99.999% of the time. on transfer speculation. So when these same people come out and talk about manager speculation, shouldn't we take it with the same pinch of salt?
No, I only use that as, sorry to interrupt, but I only use that as an example because we've literally seen from the horse's mouth, if you excuse the pun, Harry Redknapp say, I want to take it. Tim Sherwood say, I want to take it. You know, that's why, because I think they're the only ones who've literally put their head above the parapet and gone, no, I absolutely do it. And even Sherwood said, I'll keep them up. Now, you know, like I said, I have my reservations about Sherwood, but what I mean is, if they're doing that, then Enoch can presumably just go to them and say, we think you should do it. Why do they not want to take that?
Because maybe they're sitting there not of the same mindset that we are. Like the Thomas Frank, not necessarily about who's the right guy to replace. It's whether Igor Tudor is the right guy to be sacked, or whether Thomas Frank was the right guy to be sacked. Like the speculation around Thomas Frank's future started in September, and it built in October. In November, it was deafening.
Yeah,
and it took until February, after the window closed, for the hammer to fall, right? So, like, it's not necessarily that they don't want Redknapp, or it's not necessarily that they don't want Sherwood or De Zerbi or any of these other people. It might just be that they don't want to continually, you know, like, are they having discussions the way we are about whether or not a personnel? I've worked at giant organizations, giant corporations, right? And there's been massive like flows of sentiment that's publicly been, like, you know, in certain corridors been spoken about with certain people. The willingness to fire employees in certain organizations is nowhere near as big as you would think it would be. People that underperform, when I was at Google, when I was in banking, like the people that I'm talking about, I won't mention names, but the people I'm talking about in certain circles, in financial circles, in tech circles, that's public discourse. And there's speculation around what these people are doing. Internally, they might be, you might have opinions about whether they were terrible or good at their job, but there was absolutely no discourse about whether those people should be fired or anything else. It's just like the willingness to kind of chop and change your personnel is not necessarily the same as people that don't have a dog in the fight that actually relates to the economics of the environment. And so we don't know whether or not Vinay or anyone else is sitting there having daily conversations around whether or not Igor Tudor is the right guy for the job.
Yeah, but they have to be, because his job was to be brought into his job. He was brought in to provide a managerial bounce, and he's lost 5 and drawn 1 in 6. And the reality of it is, if he doesn't turn it around, or someone doesn't come in and turn it around, then 300 people within that corporation are going to lose their jobs overnight. So they are under mega pressure. And so if they're not, I mean, all I can say is hypothetically, if they're not having the same conversations that we are, and I'm sure they must be in those boardrooms, in that boardroom, then their heads are in the sand, and you know, they're going to take us down.
So on that basis, then what is it that took them so long? Like when the fan base started talking and the media started speculating around Thomas Frank, and the same thing with Ange Postecoglou. Ange Postecoglou, the people were shouting for his sacking from about October of 2024, right? But he carried all the way through until the final.
I think I have different theories on this. I think Daniel Levy was listening to all of the anti-Levy sentiment, was that was like, you sack your managers too early, and Ange Postecoglou was saying, you know, I always win a trophy in my second year, so he stuck with it and actually proved to work for him. And I think after that, I'm going to say, look, on the day of the parade, I thought you can't sack him, but 2 weeks after, I thought, yeah, it's the right thing to do. With Thomas Frank, I'm going to say, Vinay, this is my theory on this, which is, you know, I think common to quite a lot of people. Vinay Venkatesham has this whole, I'm responsible for Arteta's success bollocks. And so he was like, well, we got to stick with him. We got to stick with him, until the point where it became clear, actually, he's taking us to relegation. And so he had to make a change he didn't want to. And I think there's probably a chance now with Tudor that Vinay is still saying, I think, you know, maybe it'll come good. And I think he's 2 games too late already. I did a video the Monday after the Liverpool draw, the day after, the Monday morning, and people hated it. I was like, 5 or 10 reasons we still have to sack Tudor today. And the main one for me is that Tudor, in any game where there's been any pressure on Spurs to win it, as in it's not a free shot, it's not an unlikely one like Anfield or Atletico Madrid, we crumbled. He's not the right man. I don't think they're playing for him, just like they weren't playing for Thomas Frank. They don't rate him. They don't believe in him. He has to go. They've waited 2 more games because we got the win against Atletico Madrid. I thought that was a mistake. I think it's more of a mistake now. And, you know, I think he is going to go, Sean. I think he's going to go in the next hours or day, and they're going to find a way to, you know, manipulate it around the sad death of his father. And then we're going to see something mental, I think. Either they're going to bring in someone mental like we've discussed, like Redknapp, like Sherwood, like Ange, or they're going to bring in Adolf Hutter, who is another manager who doesn't have Premier League experience, which isn't a huge thing for me necessarily, but in terms of the media landscape and how the ex-player pundits come on, they'll all be at him, so the pressure will be added on him straight away. Or if they seem so sure that they can maybe get De Zerbi to change his mind with like a release clause or something. But here's my probably controversial take on that. I don't think the players are going to buy into De Zerbi shouting at them straight away either. I really don't. And De Zerbi is like Conte, but times 1,000. Yes, he plays more beautiful football, and they might appreciate that. But for 7 games, I think that's a risk, I have to say. I do. So listen, I'm not coming here blessed with answers that I think are, you know, great. Or many answers even. Listen, this board have got themselves in the mother of all shit piles. And that is especially another reason why I just think, you know, I don't know if it really matters who they bring in. Listen, because I have to leave in 4 minutes, right? I'm going to say this one last thing that I wrote down that I wanted to say.
Sure.
I don't think West Ham or Nottingham Forest are going down. I feel so strongly about that. And people aren't talking about this, but I think our one chance of not going down is Leeds. Leeds are not, they're picking up draws, but they're not winning anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And I think what Spurs need to hope is that Leeds don't pick up a win in the next few games, and then we've got them at home. Now, when I think about Tottenham versus Leeds at home compared to Tottenham versus Forest at home, I think our squad and our team, especially if we get the injuries back with Kudus, etc., maybe a Bentancur, whatever, Berghvall and Udogie being more fit, I think we can turn them over at home. And if we can keep them within 3 points, and that's 3 points now, we've got a better goal difference. At that point, then on the last day, as far as I'm aware, I had a look before, it's West Ham Leeds on the last day. And I think it might be the case if we can take it to that last day where we beat Everton at home to stay up and Leeds go down, that's our chance. But I'm telling you, Forest and West Ham not going down. And if we think it's going to be one of those, we're in the shit big time.
Yeah, listen, when I was looking at the game, the run-ins for all the teams 3 weeks ago, I thought that it was a sure thing Forest are going to go down because Forest's run-in was horrendous. But they managed to grab points in places that I didn't expect. And obviously last Sunday was one of those games. I don't know. I think Tottenham need Tottenham fans that still look at our home form and think, oh, we've got these guys at home. Like for me, you know, we're better away from home than we are at home. That much is clear.
It might be more likely that we get results against Villa and Chelsea that we're not expecting because of the lack of the slight lack, you know, 10%, 15% less expectation. Yeah, I agree.
You know, but look, as far as the manager goes, mate, I listen. I concur with you. I don't know what the solution is. Igor Tudor clearly isn't the solution. You've only got a couple of minutes, so let me just ask you this, right? So his father has sadly passed. Yeah. Is that the great opportunity that Tottenham's ownership can utilize, whereby they can spin the narrative, right? For me, this new majority owners have become, you know, I found it so insulting and galling when Vinay turned around and said, you know, we've done the audit, insufficient focus on expertise since under Daniel Levy's tenure. Well, in the 10 months that he's been here, the only people that he's employed that have sufficient expertise are PR merchants, you know, communications person, a marketing person. These guys they're PR, right? And so it seems like they're more interested in creating the narrative than actually fixing the problems. And for me, there's an opportunity within the narrative right now. If I'm the communications person that's been responsible for the PR spin, I'm sitting there thinking, if you sack Igor Tudor, you look like you don't know what you're doing even more than everyone thinks you don't anyway, even though it might be the right call. If you bring in someone else, it doesn't work out, once again, you're going to be shamed. However, what you can do right now, because sadly his father's passed, is you can say, we're not sacking, we are terminating by mutual consent because he's had other personal private issues that are far more important to him in the short term. And unfortunately, our football club needs to focus on Tottenham. So by that, so it doesn't look like it's a sacking. They can spin it and say we weren't going to sack him, but he wants out because of other things. Is that what you see is going to happen here?
Listen, let me tell you where I am with this. I think what has happened to Tudor, it could only have happened to Tottenham, because if you think about, I promise you, Sean, I've never felt more clear of anything. If Igor, and listen, like I said, I have to caveat, very sad that Igor Tudor's father died. My dad died a couple of years ago. I know what he's going through, etc., etc. But like I said earlier, I'm talking as if that hadn't happened. If that hadn't happened, he would have been sacked by now. Igor Tudor would not be the Tottenham manager by now. 9 a.m. yesterday morning, the corner flag. I promise you. So it could only have happened to Tottenham in the same way that under Conte, his gallbladder exploded, his best mate, the fitness coach, died, and some other bloke died as well. Tottenham are cursed, we're cursed, and it's happened. But listen, in answer to your question, they have to let him go and they have to find a way. Now, I think one of the difficult parts is, I think they've probably already gone to Igor Tudor or his representatives and said, maybe it's best you're grieving if we let you go home for the rest of the season. If he says, no, I want to manage the team, then they are in the shit because they have to stone cold fire him. They have to fire him. And at that point, you have the whole press. You have the press.
You insensitive arseholes.
But as Simon Jordan said, I saw him talk about it on TalkSport earlier. He said, this is a business. You have to do the right thing by the business.
You have to.
And that's what they're going to have to do, because for it to be a mutual thing, that involves him kind of agreeing. And I think he probably won't, because he'll get less money that way. But listen, Sean, thank you so much for having me on. I've really enjoyed it, guys. Please do find my YouTube channel at Barnaby Slater _ for more of this kind of stuff. And Sean's going to come on my channel lots too. We're going to do more weekly stuff.
Yeah, we're doing more and more together. Barnaby, listen, mate, great to have you on. Short but sweet, as always, mate. I love you to pieces, man. Thanks for coming on, bringing the logic, bringing the sense.
Lubo as well. Thank you.
I'll make sure everyone gets your channel over there, mate. Please give up to big up to Lubo, big up to Barnaby. Thanks, Barnaby. Have a good day. Rest of your work, mate.
Hey guys,
see you
bye.
Soon. Take care. Right, Lubington.
Right.
You back? You okay?
Right.
Okay?
Yeah, all good. All good, all done. Sorted.
I'm going to do a couple of super chats now, and then I'm going to ask you a probing question, and then I've got to run for a wee because I'm busting for a wee. But I'm going to do some quick super chats, and then I'm going to ask you a question to answer on my behalf. Big up to Sniffer, my man, Sniff Dog, Newcastle fan. Big up to you, my man. Big up to you. Commiserations for your Tyneside derby. Didn't go the way you wanted. Once again, Eddie Howe under the spotlight. I know, Sniffer, you don't rate him, do you? Big up to you, though. Choo to you. Choo. Thank you very much for the super chat. I would take Eddie Howe in a heartbeat if he was relieved of his duties at Newcastle. I think
for sure.
Top manager. Sure. Doesn't get on with too many DOFs, but for me, smart and I don't know what's happening at Newcastle. I don't know why he's sort of it's falling off a cliff a little bit, but big up to you, mate. Box Kev, big up to you, Boxy. How you doing, my man? He says, my content creator. Big up to you, Box. Appreciate you, my man. Hope you're okay. Are you back from Japan yet? You back in California, eh? I hope you have travelled well, mate. I hope you are healthy and happy, mate. Thank you very much again, as always, mate, for the very generous super sticker, mate. Thank you very much. Choo to you, Boxy. Choo to you, buddy. Appreciate you, boss. The Bears Cave from Woking, my man, my Woking friend. Morning, Sean. I went for a massage down at the Brooklyn Spa on Monday. Interesting. Happy one? Just like the game. No happy ending. No happy ending. Yeah, Brooke, mate, you want it? There's one in Woking High Street, mate. Wink, wink. There's one in Woking High Street, just opposite the Hilton. If that's where you want, then go there, bro. Go there. Trust me, bro. Trust me. Big up to you, Bears Cave. I hope you're okay, mate. Thank you very much indeed. Sniffer has come back in with another super sticker. Big up to you, Sniff Dog. Appreciate you, mate. Thank you so much as always. Absolute legend. Roy Viking, big up to you, Roy. Member for 38 months. Unbelievable generosity and consistent support. We should do exactly the same in the next home game as well. I've seen people saying this. I've seen people on Twitter saying this. I'm going to ask, this is the question I'm going to ask Lubo. I'm going to run to the toilet. Big up to you, Roy. Stay there for 1 second, mate. I'll come back to that one in a second. Thank you for your support. And Dino Chudini, big up to you, my man. I've just seen your Twitter message, mate, now. It always comes through like 4 hours or a day too late. I was in the 8 bar. Was in the 8 bar before and after the game for hours out the back. So Just assume that I'm in the beer garden, mate. That's where I'm always found, mate. You should come up and say hello. Love you too, Dini. Love you, mate. Choo to you. Choo to you. Let me ask you this, Lubo. I'm going for a wee. But we'll get back into the football side of the things. But the debate about the protest or the parade, whatever you want to call it, a lot of people saying we're going to do the same thing. I think I've seen Shellside Spurs and that saying. I think Shellside Spurs was weird. Like he sort of spun it saying the football club made a mistake by making too much of a big deal about it, and that they put all this kind of content out beforehand. Everton didn't do that. It was organic. It wasn't forced by the club. I mean, I don't know. Like you're championing something. The club supports it, gets behind it, tries to push the narrative. Then the game doesn't work out the way you want, and then part of the people that were the organisers of it then react to the criticism that they get from people that are missing the wood for the trees, in my opinion, and react by saying, well, the club fucked up by making too big of a deal about it. I thought that's a little bit self-preservation mode. I don't know the guy, so no disrespect to him, but I just feel like you either own it or you don't, and you should own it. There's nothing about the whole thing that happened before the game that is in any way shameful. It's in any way embarrassing. It's fan bases getting together to realise and recognise the severity of the situation and doing whatever they can. You shouldn't apologise for that. You shouldn't try to deflect the blame onto the football club because it didn't work out. Had we won the game 3-0, it wouldn't be this narrative. So it's reverse engineering for self-preservation. I find it all weird, but Lubo, like in terms of should it happen again for the next home game, where are you at with that?
Well, in terms,
I can still hear you, but I've just got to run for a week.
In terms of backtracking, in terms of Sunday, I think that the club were very clever. They got on board with it. They did the 2-for-1 in terms of pints for beer, I think, which was from what, 12:15 to 1:30. So the fans that weren't interested in going and seeing the team bus at 1:45, they would turn up early. So once they're there, they're getting their 2-for-1, but they're buying more because they're there longer. And then you had all the people that would flood into the ground straight after the coach has gone, that they will come for their 2-for-1 and they will buy more, and there'll be more people coming in for a drink because there's more people outside the grounds waving the team coach on. So the club made financially. They made. I saw something. I haven't had it substantiated. Somebody, was it Tel put that the club, that it was the biggest. It was the highest amount they have sold in beverage at a match since the ground started on Sunday. I don't know how true that is. I've asked Tel to substantiate that. I think it was Tel that put it on.
Yeah, it's a load of bollocks, mate. First and foremost, the time zone of that buy one get one free beer thing was at the same time when everyone was outside in the parade.
Well, you got as I said just now, Sean, the people that didn't want to go to the parade, that couldn't be asked, went in there to start drinking early, and the ones that were all flooded in and got their 2-for-1.
How are they going to make more revenue by giving away half the beers for free? Doesn't make any sense, does it?
Well, it depends. If you got to more than double your sales, haven't you, to make money?
You're not going to double your sales away. Come on now.
I don't know. Maybe you do. Maybe you will.
First of all, whoever said that couldn't possibly know unless there's an insider that happens to be the commercial hospitality director at the football club. Yeah. It's a load of bollocks made up by people that want to ridicule the club wherever. And it's no surprise to me that Tel has latched onto whatever he's heard to push that narrative. Unsubstantiated waffle. Like, it's bollocks. Absolute bollocks.
Listen.
You couldn't possibly know it. I'm not saying it's not true, but I'm saying to say that it's true is like.
Why do a 2-for-1? Why do a 2-for-1 specifically for the first time in 7 years? Why do a 2-for-1 for this week?
To me, it's obvious, right? To make it look like you're jumping on board a bandwagon when at the same time the vast majority of people are not going to be there to take advantage of it. Like, it looks great, right? But everyone's going to be outside. So it's not going to be utilised the way it looks like it was.
Depends how much they sell when the people come through the door. I mean, they must have had a mad half an hour.
By the time the bus went past, you had 10 minutes to get into the stadium. But I got into the stadium 15 minutes later and I missed it because I bought a cider.
Wasn't it till 1:30, Sean? I thought it was till 1:30, the 2 for 1.
Yeah, but the bus didn't go past until 5 to 1, so 10 to 1. Well, sorry, 1 o'clock or whatever. Also, by the way, how do we even know that the bus was actually like full of players? Like the bus was blacked out. It could have just been an empty bus.
It could have been, but that is. I saw a picture of the bus, and that is the team bus that we see outside away grounds, Sean.
Sure.
So, you know, it's the paintwork and the way it's Tottenham Hotspur football club.
I know, but it doesn't mean that
it's very distinctive, unless you've got 2 of those. But I can't believe there is.
Not necessarily. The players could have arrived via a back door.
Yeah, they could have done.
You know, like, doesn't matter. I'm not saying that's the case. I'm just saying, you know, no one saw a single player.
Ramblings. This is.
Imagine if that came. Imagine if someone happened to get a picture of Richalison rocking up, you know, via Uber.
Can you imagine? Via Uber, yeah. Getting out of an Uber. Yeah. All the players getting out of Ubers, you know.
Yeah, or if they're seen leaving the stadium at 5 o'clock in their cars, and you're like, how are you in your normal car when you were supposed to arrive at the stadium in a bus? You know, no one knows. We could have all been cheering an empty bus for all we know.
Well, that's exactly it. The driver with no one inside. Can you imagine?
Imagine if that got out. If that got out, it'd be absolutely hilarious. You know, but listen, in terms of the actual parade thing, like, where do you sit on it, Lubo? Because I know you're ENIC out, right? I know you hate the owners. And I know a lot of the Change for Tottenham boys hate the owners and stuff as well. Change for Tottenham got so much heat. Yeah. And by the way, I'm going to sit here and stand on ceremony.
Mm.
Those people that are giving Billy T and Connor and Hayden and Jay and whoever else, right? The other 7 or 8 people that are involved in that, like, you are. I'm going to be honest. You're fucking idiots. You're fucking idiots if you think that Change for Tottenham should have had their own little pocket at the south end, but where people that were walking down from 11 o'clock would have turned and saw that and gone, no. you look ridiculous. Like, they made absolutely the right call. They made absolutely the right call. And the fact that because the game went the way it did, which had absolutely no bearing on Change for Tottenham, it was not they weren't responsible. Neither were the people that celebrated or cheered or whatever else. Right? Well, the fans did what the fans could do. The players didn't. Like, the players ran out of steam. But the fact that people that want to fucking like surround themselves with this air of, I don't know, I'm gonna wait until the wind pivots back towards negative and then say I fucking told you also. Like, it's so shameless and transparent to me. It's embarrassing. It really is embarrassing to give people a hard time for seeing what was the wood for the trees and then pretend like something else would have had a different impact. It's mental to me. Absolutely mental.
I understood why they did it for this game. It was a massive game. It was a 6-pointer. And if you're going to pick a game to do it, then you don't wait to the end of the season when it could be all done and dusted. Got no problem. Anything positive in terms of supporting a team is a good thing. So for me, I had no problem with that parade being done. The problem I've got is that people are going to a parade to try and lift the players because the situation we're in, that ultimately is the fault of the owners that they refuse to protest against. So for me, it's really hypocritical. That's
it's not hypocritical,
that's
mate.
That's what I can't. There's this
settled science. The people that feel the way that you do, Lubo, and like more extreme versions of you, it's this settled science, right? It's this settled science that we wouldn't be in the situation we were in if everyone did it my way. Yet there is absolutely zero evidence anywhere else in world fucking football that doing it their way works.
Give it a go.
At the right time. And they've tried, like the people that sit there and have a crack at Change for Tottenham, they've tried to organise their own protests and have failed miserably for 6 years. And they sit there and give advice and tell Change for Tottenham, who have at least succeeded to some degree,
I'm not
right,
talking about change for Tottenham. I'm not talking about change. I'm not talking about
the ENIC out movement, right? The people that support the ENIC out movement, and that's fine. It's fine, right? It's fine. But they come up with these solutions that they have tried themselves and failed miserably with it. They've failed miserably for years at organizing and orchestrating protests. And then they give advice to the people that have tried and to some degree succeeded, and then say, you're not doing it the way I want it done. So fuck you. And you're shit.
no, sure.
And you don't know what you're doing. But it's like me telling Elon Musk, you're shit at organizing a tech company. I tried to start a tech company. It failed. It was dead on arrival. Sure. And then me telling Elon Musk how to do it. It's mental.
But the beauty about democracy is that you can protest. If fans don't protest, then the owners don't know that the fans are unhappy about it. And they think, oh, fans are on board with everything we're doing. Which fans are not.
Come on, mate. You think that ENIC? You think the people in the boardroom sit there and go, "The fans love us because they're not protesting"? Is that you actually? Where does that logic come from?
I think the fact that Change for Tottenham got a couple of thousand or close on for two demos, 2 protests last year, made the board very aware that the fans weren't happy because this was a lot different. Really,
like 20,000 people turned up on Sunday.
That's not the point I'm talking about. I'm not talking about supporting the team. I'm talking about something completely different. And
you're suggesting that protest, the amount of people that turn up to a protest, directly relates to the amount of people that are happy or satisfied with the ownership?
No, of course not. But the protests at the moment are dead. There's you can't go back to them at the moment. It's done. There's got to be other ways of doing it, and there's got to be cleverer ways of doing it. I'm just talking about over the past year when people have had the opportunity to come out and have a voice. People can't be happy at the way this club has gone downhill over the last few years. They can't be. So
do you think the advocates of the hardcore protest telling fans that they're fucking idiots is the right way to get them on board?
Well, that doesn't help. You've got to win minds and you've got to win hearts and minds, haven't you? And you've got to persuade people to, and you've got to do it in a nice way. People,
isn't that what Change for Tottenham are doing, right? Trying to figure out the right way to communicate, trying to figure out when is it, what battle is worth fighting, and how to live to fight another day. And the people that are sitting there who have tried and failed to organize protests, and I'm not speaking to anyone specifically. I'm talking about the general movement, the hardcore that latch on to any sentiment that is negative and then wait for it and then go, see, I told you so. It should have been done my way, when they haven't successfully organized any protest ever by doing it the way that they've tried to do it, then lambasting the people who have at least succeeded temporarily to try to do it a different way and say, you didn't listen to me, you should have done that way. And because they'll never know the other outcome because it was a entirely different reality, they can say things like, the parade failed, should have done it my way, it would have succeeded. What evidence is there that having an ENIC out protest before the game against Nottingham Forest would have had any better outcomes?
That's not what I was saying, Sean. I didn't say we should have had a protest before the game. My point is that where I don't understand is that people will come out. I'm talking about over the past year. I'm not talking about Sunday. Because for me, you've got to get behind the team and try and lift the team and keep and help do whatever you can to help the performance of the players so that we stay in the Premier League. My point is that everybody has a voice. You know, it's been going wrong for some time. People may not agree with me that it's been going wrong for 33 years, but people can see, you know, if you want to go short term over the last 3 years since Conte left, the results have been horrendous. And so if you take it on a short 3-year period, the results have been poor. They've been getting worse and worse and worse. And here we are, we're in serious danger of going into the Championship. And people don't want to have a voice. They've all got a voice. They've all got an opportunity. There's no guarantee it's going to work. But you know what? If they did what United did, you know, the Glazers are hated, but they sold 25% and they left the running of the football club to Ratcliffe. Now, you can judge Ratcliffe. That's a separate situation. But if you had somebody in who is going to come in and do a good job and knows how to run a business, and has got a sporting pedigree, Sean, then for me, that's a good thing. And if protesting focuses the owners' minds, and they listen, they tried to find a financial boost. They tried to get investment through Rothschilds for a year, but from what I'm told, somebody kept kiboshing whatever situations came through. So that's how.
But I don't know how to say this right, but my point is not like, it's not getting to the specifics. And big up to you, Adam, for coming on, mate. How you doing, bro?
Yep.
I find the opportunism, of like divisions within the fan base. I just find it insufferable, personally. Like, you don't know what would have happened if you chose a different path. But if I was a betting man, and I am, and there was a chance to be able to see the different timeline, I would have bet every penny that I have that changed for Tottenham would have looked more. They would have been ridiculed, absolutely ridiculed, by all but the hardcore fans who barely ever turned up to their own protests anyway. And if you were in the pursuit of trying to win over the middle ground, then you would have absolutely kiboshed and destroyed any chance of winning that. Even if they'd lost the game not the way they did, or won the game. If we'd won the game, there'd be no conversation about this. But the parade versus the actual match itself, they're two entirely different things. The fans did what they could. I think the fans should be supported, applauded, and appreciated for trying to do the little things that they can do to help the team. But at the same time, there's evidence to suggest the fans really have very little impact in what the football club can actually do, right? Good or bad. The fans cheered them on. They still lost the game.
Tell you what I didn't like.
Let me just one second. If the fans had gone the other way and 20,000 people came out and booed the owners, it doesn't mean that the players would have played better. And it certainly doesn't mean that the ownership would have sold the football club. There's no evidence. I've said this for fucking years. There is absolutely zero evidence that protests directly result in what the protesters want. There's no evidence of it at all. People point to Newcastle United. People point to Sheffield Wednesday. Right? Sheffield Wednesday was only sold as a consequence of legal kind of frameworks put in place around their owner. Newcastle had to wait 15 years, I think it was, for Ashley to find the right price point. If it makes you feel better, protest. But at the same time, Change for Tottenham are trying to do what the other people failed for their entire attempts, which is to win over the middle ground.
Sean, you asked me what I thought. I haven't mentioned Change for Tottenham.
No, I'm talking about Change for Tottenham, though. I'm asking about Change for Tottenham.
I think when only 150 to 200 turned up for the West Ham demo, and that was January, and things weren't great in January. League position, nothing like now, but it was on the slide. What did we had? 2 wins in 2.5 months at that stage. So things weren't good, and people couldn't be bothered to turn up for whatever reason. For me, I looked at that and I thought, well, we've got to look at,
because fans that go to games don't want to fucking surround themselves with negativity. They're going to the game for a day out.
But that's that. Do you not think that's how it's changed, isn't it? Because like when my dad used to say to me when he used to go and watch Tottenham when he used to live in Enfield and he used to go there and watch the Tottenham match, it would be the first hour of his week. That's back then. I'm going back a long time. It was the first hour of his week's wages to go to a game, right? I don't know how old you are, Lubo, but you probably know how much it cost back when you first started going. And the people that are going to games now are not the average Joe. They're not the average Joe that are doing the average. You know what I mean? And how many tickets are corporate and this, that, and the other, and
correct.
It's a different clientele. That
Correct.
If you go back 50 years to who was at a football match at Tottenham at White Hart Lane compared to who is at a football match when the stadium's sold, and the other thing is when you get to a decent like game. So say we get to say we got through to the quarterfinals of the Champions League. do you know what? The average Joe wouldn't be able to afford a ticket, or they wouldn't be able to get a ticket because them tickets are already gone, and they're people that are going to a game, and a majority of them people are really not in a supporting sort of don't know how to word it. Really, they're not cut from the cloth that we are. You know,
It's different. It was it was different. How old's your dad? Out of interest.
he's 77.
Okay, I'm 9 years younger, but it's the same. I understand it's the same period virtually. I've been going since since
Similar.
65. That's right. I was queuing up early 70s. You know, at 6 o'clock in the morning for cup tickets. You know, when the queues were going right the way round the ground from the ticket office. It's changed since the Tottenham Action Group 25, 26 years ago, Adam. Where you know when you had 5,000-10,000 fans at the club gates protesting against sugar.
Yeah,
it's completely changed. Football in London it's different clientele. The prices in the big three clubs are the most expensive anywhere in the country, and it has changed. It has changed. There aren't I'd say like the working class fans that there used to be that love their club. The football, you know, there's so much more going on as well in life today, and football is not as big down here. There's so many other events and so many other things going on. In Newcastle, football's massive. Football is a massive part of living in Newcastle. Down here, also, you got 13 league clubs. It's a lot different from a one club, you know, from a city with one club.
it's like buying a one-off ticket. You've got to become a Hotspur One member or whatever you've got to do just to buy a ticket. See, you're 50, 55 pound in the pocket before you've even tried to buy a ticket.
Without being guaranteed a ticket.
If you go back 40 years, just quickly, if you go back 40 years, I looked into this. Right, it's a true fact. In order to buy a house on minimum wage, right, back in the day when Lubo, when you were growing up or whatever, or people were slightly older than you, if you were trying to buy a house on minimum wage, which you could have done in America or you could have done in the UK, you could have been an employee of a flower shop and you could have earned enough money. The equivalent minimum wage that you would have to earn in the UK right now to be able to get on the housing ladder at the same standard, the same level as you did back then, would be £80 an hour. Right,
so standard. I lived in America 6 years ago. The price is there. You could the house that I was helping this guy do up opposite where I was living in Kentucky. It was like a 3-bedroom place with a house, well, technically 4-bedroom, with an acre of land, and you're talking $45,000. I mean, what are you getting here for that? You know what I mean?
I bought a bottle of Volvic earlier. A little bottle of Volvic with a lemon thing in it. It was £2.95. Right, so it's not just the price of football that's gone up; it's the price of everything that's gone up because
exactly.
So like, but just because you're forced to pay for your eggs, you're forced to pay for your bread. People are upset about it, but they don't blame. They're not looking for scapegoats on it. It is what it is. It's not acceptable. But like the price of Tottenham is going up as well. Right? It's ridiculously expensive, but it is what it is. It is what it is. Like we're sitting there trying to find ghost arguments to sit there and blame our particular owners. But the same thing happens in every other walk of life, and yet your resentment towards those things can be still true, but we don't talk about them all day long. Everything is far more expensive. I don't believe, for what it's worth, that there is a correlation between the level of fandom that you have for a football club and your wealth or your social status. I know the idea that football used to be a working class sport and now it's a middle class sport, whatever else. I hear that argument because people are getting priced out disproportionately depending on where you sit on the ladder. But at the end of the day, like one of my good friends, Danny Hall, he's a multi-millionaire that sits in the Tunnel Club, but he come from working class stock. And he's as passionate about Tottenham as anyone else I know. This argument that you care more about the football, you'd argue more, you'd resent them more, you'd do more if you were, because you're poor or because you come from working class background. And the reason why more people don't protest is because they have they have more money and they can afford to go to the game. I just think it's a massive leap without any real logical consciousness that people with money don't care as much as people without money about their football club. I just like, how do people come to that conclusion other than just sitting there and saying, because people don't feel the way I feel right now at the Tottenham Football Club, therefore the only logical answer is that people that have money to afford the tickets don't care as much as those that don't. I think that's a load of bollocks.
I do get what you're saying. I get what you're saying with that, Sean. But do you know what? I've got like an identical memory, mate. I remember. Do you remember? I reckon it was about 6 months ago. You were talking about this, right? And I remember someone arguing with you on here about the ticket prices, and I think that might have been around. Maybe around the time, do you remember when they got rid of the senior discount thing? And you made a very good point then, is that if you're selling out every week, it's business, isn't it? To them, it's business. And if they can still put that price up and still sell out every week, that is part of business. They're going to put the price up.
There's a logic to that conclusion. But what I was saying specifically about the senior citizens thing was that, like, if there's an argument to sit there and say that everybody over the age of 65 should get a discount, well, because the demographics of society are that the baby boomers are, you know, in right now and in the next 5 or 10 years, at least within England and the traditional population in England, 65% of the population will be supported by 35% of the population because it's an aging population. Yeah. On that basis, in order for everybody that's 65 or older to get a discount at Tottenham Hotspur, then in order to make ends meet, the people that are of working age, the 35%, if the demographics in the society translate to the Tottenham Stadium ticket base, then 35% will have to have their prices raised to pay for the discounts that are offered to the 65%. And the pushback was, well, that's not the case because, you know, it's only a couple of blocks that get the discount. And I'm like, well, okay, if that's the case, then how is it okay that those people that are within that particular block get the discount, but other people that aren't in that block, that are 66, 68, 67, whatever else, how they have to pay full price because they don't get access to the block? In either scenario, it's unfair. It's either unfair on the 35-year-olds that have to cover the difference for the 65-year-olds, of whom, by the way, are the wealthiest generation. Maybe not individually. You might not be individually wealthier as a 70-year-old who lives in Tottenham that's been a season ticket holder. But generally speaking, the wealthiest population in Britain are the retirees right now, at least in assets. So either it's unfair that the 35-year-olds have to pay for the 65-year-olds, or it's unfair that some 65-year-olds and over get the discount, but others don't.
Yeah.
Either way, it's a difficult square to circle. Is all the point I was making. Just on economics.
Can I just come in with something else? I know it's nothing to do with what we're talking about, but it was a big reason why I wanted to come on here. And obviously, I'm starting to notice now, like there's other. I'm not going to name any names. There's other podcasts where there's arguments in the chat, and I'm noticing that it's starting to creep in here a little bit with people sort of gunning against each other and really disrespecting each other. And I just want to turn around and say one thing, like being a mod's one thing, right? I think you have to control the environment and you have to sort of back Sean up and try and when he's in mid flow, you need to be able to just jump on them negative comments and bounce them people that need to be bounced. I mentioned something earlier. It had nothing. It was no way bad at all. Someone agreed with me. And that comment got deleted. That should never have got deleted, right? I was talking about the board of the club, and I've noticed since then there's been a lot of negativities in the chat today. And I think if you're going to be a mod, you got to take, like, with great power comes great responsibility. But also, you know, like I know the situation at the moment is so toxic when it's with people's opinions and how people are sort of coming at each other with things. Right, but what you've got to think about is when someone has an opinion, you've got to respect that opinion. Or if you don't agree with it, argue the opinion. Don't argue the person. And when you start name calling, when people start name calling, I don't agree with that. I just wanted to say that.
Listen, if there's mods in the chat that are just deleting people's comments, what we're doing here, mods. I trust you guys. You guys have got power to control the conversation, but I don't want it to be like other places where disagreements get blocked. That's not what we do here. This channel's
No, exactly. And that's what what you've always made a point of, Sean, is that our group of people in here, you know, whether we go into other sort of like when we're on Spurs 5 and there's a fraction of us and a fraction of them and a fraction of them, that's different, right? That's a different ball game. But when we're in here, come on, guys, what are we doing here?
I don't think it is a different ball game. It's not a different ball game.
Sorry, just 1 second. So 1 second. Same with Spurs 5, by the way. I saw last night that someone was blocked. I had to unblock him, right? Only because I see what was going on.
Right,
like,
yeah.
If you don't like someone because they don't like your take, as long as I only want people blocked from this channel. For all the mods that are listening, I only want people blocked if they're saying things that are racist, if they're calling people, if they're going out of their way to be
name calling,
whatever, like just horrendous behavior. If it's just people that are and also spammers, right? If spammers come in, block the spammers. Time out people if they're being outrageous. Don't block people because they don't agree with your take. If that's what the mods are doing on this channel, I've got to go and review who the mods are.
Yeah.
I trust you lot. Fucking sort it out. Sorry,
Sean, in terms of comments, I mean, I've seen one comment on here a few minutes ago saying I'm talking shit again. Well, maybe you think I talk shit all the time, but if you do on a specific,
leave that one alone. That's fine, right?
If you do on a subject, come back. Be a little bit more eloquent than that. Come back and tell me why you think I'm wrong.
Exactly.
This is a podcast. This is a discussion platform, and the comments are a discussion platform as well. So come back. If you don't agree, that's fine. That's fine. We're all. Listen,
I can go and review all of the behaviour by the mods. So if there's a mod that's in my mod that's sitting there just kicking people out because they're saying things that are disagreeable with their Spurs view, then I'll strip you all and start again. I don't do that. Don't fucking do that. Other channels can behave how they want, but this is not what we do here. Not what we do. Okay, everyone's just don't be a donut, but don't fucking mods. Don't block people for having different opinions. That's not the argument. What are we doing here?
That was a big reason why I wanted to come on here, just to make that point. Really, I mean, obviously, I want to be a part of having a chat about everything. But and the other thing I wanted to say was about what you were saying about turning up and support, like, you know, the amount of people that turned up for the bus there. How people can turn around and knock anyone that turned up, because you know what, you have to live in hope with the momentum that we were getting. Like you see the Liverpool result. When that goal went in and Vicario, I mean, like, not being funny, the way Spurs came back in that game, and then we went and played against obviously Atletico. We performed the way that we did. Do you know what? They did the right thing cancelling that change for Tottenham thing. They did the right thing, because if there was so many people standing there while all them people were cheering the bus on, I mean, well, that's just crazy, you know. And I said it in a chat the other day that if we just say, for example, 3 games before the end of the season, like, the last 3 games, we've got 2 home games, haven't we? Right? Is it Leeds and Everton, or is it someone in Everton?
Yeah. Leeds, then Chelsea and Everton, last 3.
Yeah, right. Okay. So if we were at a point of where it would have took a miracle for one of these other clubs to sort of get back, like for us to still be relegated, last 2 games of the season, yeah, all day long, go for it. Go for the protest. Go for the protest, because we're in this situation, but we're not in this situation. So we need to support the players. We need to stand there and cheer them on the bus. Okay, it didn't come of light this weekend. It didn't reflect on how the supporters supported the team. It didn't. And we all still agree we want the owners out, but there's a time and there's the place, isn't there? There's, you know.
But you know, Adam, if you're going to support the players, if you're going to support the team, and you want to make a show of supporting the team, then do it for better or for worse. Don't just do it before the game because you think it's going to help them and we're going to do well. When we're doing shit in the game, don't boo them. And they booed them off at the end of the game. I'm sorry. That's wrong.
Do you know what you should try doing, Sean, one weekend?
Hold on. Booing during the game?
No, at the end of the game.
That's what I'm saying. So booing during the game is unhelpful. Booing at the end of the game, I don't know if I agree with that.
But then that gets misinterpreted, doesn't it? Because you remember at half time,
that was
you said it was the referee, wasn't it?
It was the referee.
And then sometimes people take that the wrong way, don't they? They're like, well,
but at the end of the game, the stadium was half empty, and those that stayed booed, right?
Yeah. Wow.
But, look, people that want to latch on to that and say you cheered the players on the bus, but you booed them off the park. So again, like to me, that's just opportunism, Lubo. Like to me, that's just people that. I'll be honest, right? Like, you know, we worked with Stel, okay. Love Stel to pieces, right? Get on with him. You know, we had a lot of history in the past and stuff. We put that to bed, and I like conversing with him because it's good content. We don't see the world of Tottenham through the same lens. We really don't, right? I don't know. You're somewhere in between. You share his empathy. You share his disgust with the ownership. But everyone's guilty of this. Everyone wants to be able to say, you know, I told you so. I was right. Everyone does. Like the fact that the three of us. I said this the other day. Right, there's people in the comments that I see all the time, right, that make absolutely wonderful points. I won't call anyone specifically out, but they consistently make really insightful points, right? And I whenever I see them, I bring them up, and I've reached out to them on Twitter when I find them, and I say, "Come on the show, you're brilliant," right? But there was a guy I bumped into on the stadium, and I said, "Come on the show." He said, "That's not for me. I'm shy. I wouldn't be able to do it." I said, "But you make such great points in the chat. Like I think you'd be valuable."
Yeah,
you know, valuable insight. He's like, I just don't want to do it. So what's the takeaway from that? Right, some people don't have the confidence to come on, put the camp and face the kind of the barrage of abuse. But of those that do, there's a common underlying thread, right? We all have egos, probably bigger egos than the average person, because we have the confidence to come out and speak on stream, right? A lot of people don't. Some people do.
I think it's confidence. I'm not sure it's ego, Sean. I just think it's confidence because we're just fans just discussing football, and I've got the privilege to do it on a platform,
okay, fine.
And people listen.
Confidence and ego are like they're not the same, but they're in the same sort of bucket, a category of personality trait, right? They're in the same kind of area, right? And so within the kind of ego side of it, not confidence, within the ego side of it, the negative of having an ego is that you don't want to be embarrassed in front of thousands of people. So that's why you get goalposts moving. That's why you get like dancing around the truth, not answering the question, waiting for your chance to say I was right, like not turning up when you're going to get a barrage of abuse, whatever, right? Because you don't want your ego to be exposed or to be dented in front of a lot of people. But at the same time, when the opportunity presents itself, when things are going against you, when the wind has changed against your direction, you don't want to be told. You don't want the heat that comes with it. But the second that you get the chance to say, "I can start pointing some fingers right now because there's less pointing at me," people jump on board that, right? And I think that you have to bake that stuff in as an audience member. You have to bake that stuff into the kind of zeitgeist of what goes on in these streams, because there's the kind of the top, like the above above ground level of what we're talking about, which is just opinions. But beneath that, there's a whole ecosystem of ego and pride that is constantly being manipulated and constantly being worked at, and people can't wait to say that they were right. Like I'm dying on the hill for Mathys Tel. I never wanted to die on the Mathys Tel hill. Right, but I'm dying on it.
But Lubo ain't on the grey hill, is he?
Because I can't stand the fact that people have made their mind up that Mathys Tel is a shit player. And to me, it's the same as that with Daniel Levy. I would much rather people just heard me for what I'm saying, that Mathys Tel is not as bad as people say he is, that Daniel Levy was not the cancer that people say he is, but instead, because there's people that are saying like extreme things over here, you as someone, me as someone in the middle who just wants balance, gets perceived or portrayed as the opposite extreme. But no one really listens to what you're saying. They hear what they want to hear.
That goes to what you were saying about like you the guy, I can't think of his name now, the guy that jumped between the different clubs and now he's paying back. What is it? Something 80% interest or something? Something ridiculous money. Who's the guy? Sean, come on.
I'm not sure
the guy that's gone from he was at Lille and then he was to do with Forest and Palace.
What's his name? Begins with a T. He was the director that caused the problem at Palace.
Yeah.
Textor, John Textor.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And you look at the interest of what he's paying, and then you look at what Levy. Look at the numbers that Levy actually negotiated with our interest and our payments and everything. Ridiculously low.
But Adam, he overspent by £500 million.
Well, it's a good job that he got that deal then, wasn't it?
This is interesting. I had a raging argument, not an argument, a debate with Connor in the 8 bar in front of we both of us screaming so loud about this that the entire bar that was trying to watch the Arsenal City final were actually dialed into me and Connor going back and forth. So Connor was saying he didn't take out enough debt, right? That Daniel Levy should have taken out because it was oversubscribed debt, and that we should have taken out more debt at that interest rate to be able to spend on players. And I disagree with him because I think you have to justify what the debt is for, and you can't buy a house and then say I need a mortgage for $1 million to buy a house that's $1 million, but actually I want $2 million and I want to fill the house with a swimming pool and a jacuzzi and all this other stuff. And Connor was anyway. Long story short, the argument around like the amount of money that we spent on the stadium, Connor was suggesting that we should have taken more debt out, because in the end, we actually stripped the club of money that the club generated to pay for the things that we could have put on a mortgage. And I don't know if that's true, but he says he's got all the documents to back it up and he's going to send it to me. And by the way, for what it's worth, if what he sends me is true, I'm more than happy, as much as it will make me look like a bit of flip-flop or whatever, I am more than happy to come on here and say Daniel Levy actually fucked up with regards to the debt financing, which you're suggesting, Adam, he did brilliantly at. Again, there's two arguments, right? Some people will say he did a great job, he locked in that amazing price point. Other people will say, well, that was the price point at the time. He wasn't a genius, he was lucky. I'm not interested in that debate, but I am interested in the debate that Connor put forward on the night. If it's true, then it might change my perspective on Daniel Levy a little bit.
But then sometimes you've got to think as well. I don't think people put into the argument is that, I mean, I was on a building job years ago, right? And we were building 14 barn houses, right? To be in situ of the area we were building on. He went to the guy who owned the property. He went to buy all the roof trusses for these buildings, right? And the bill was something like 38,000. He delayed on buying them up front, and he waited so many months, and then suddenly that bill was 55,000, right? Because products are going up, things are going up. So sometimes timing on buying certain materials and where you can store it. And let's be honest, you look at that site of where we were sort of like half building on a site where it was still there. There's a lot of things to be baked into that. A lot of things.
Adam, there were so many changes. He made so many changes, and there were so many delays, and prices were just going up and up and up and up. But unfortunately, that was one of the ramifications of the delays, was that they ended up paying more money than they would have done if he hadn't have delayed. Because,
but then you might not, or I might not, or none of us might know the long-term,
of course,
benefits of that.
I hear what you're saying.
Do you know what I mean? Sometimes the short-term.
This is the point I'm making. This is the exact point I'm making. Like, Lubo is someone, whether he realizes it or not, that he decided a long time ago that Daniel Levy was a massive problem, and now, whatever information that Lubo finds or someone sends him that may feel or does or may not necessarily feel the same way as he do, if it shines a bad light upon Levy, just like Lubo holds up that fucking newspaper that's sitting right there, every chance he gets. If you find an article in the newspaper that suggests that, let me finish my point, Lubo. Like, Lubo, you are someone that seeks positivity bias to support your narrative. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. It's a natural thing. If you feel strongly about something, you're going to seek out information that supports it, and the information that comes out that's anti it, you're probably going to be closed-minded to it.
Well,
and we are all guilty of that in everything in life. I'm not saying it's a bad thing.
No, listen, I can say quite categorically that the information I had was that Spurs used 400 million of retained profit that had built up over many years, and that went into the grounds. Now, for me, the way I've been brought up is you don't spend what you can't afford. So for me, if they put in 400 million from what should have been no more than 700, then you're taking out ultimately you end up taking out a 300 million pounds loan, which is going to be paid back over 25 years. It's comfortable. That would have been about 16, 18 million a year, I think, based on the rates that Levy got. And yes, he took the best rate he could get. He negotiated the best rate he could get that was put together with several banks, and full marks to him for that, because the timing was excellent. Because, as we've all seen, interest rates just rocketed up with after the.
Again, so you're saying that, right? But there's people like Connor the other day said on Sunday.
I don't agree with Connor. That's not
the point. It doesn't matter whether you agree or I agree or disagree. I'm just saying that if you have a predetermined condition where you want a specific outcome, like it's the same with me and Saba, for example, with Mathys Tel, right? Big up to you, Saba. I know you're still watching. And let's get away from the Levy thing for a minute. But like, I've decided that I need to back Mathys Tel because the fan base that I engage with doesn't seem to want to. And so I will sit there, and if Mathys Tel does something great, I'm pumped, and I'm going to remember every little thing that he's done, and I'm going to remind everyone of it, because I know that there's people out there that have equally made their own mind up on the other side, and are going to remind people of the things that he doesn't do. The other day, no, just Saba, I'm not having a crack at you here. This is the point in for the point of it. I heard Saba saying, Mathys Tel hasn't scored a single assist in the Premier League this season, and I was like, "What? Why is Saba drilling down on that point?" And I looked into it. Obviously, it's because he has scored an assist in the Champions League, and he has scored 3 goals in the Premier League. And Saba was saying in 32 appearances this season, or whatever it was, Saba, and forgive me if I'm wrong about the specifics, he scored 0 assists in the Premier League. And I was like, that, to me, that is an example of what I do. I do exactly the same thing. I'm guilty of exactly the same thing. I will cherry pick, and I will give you an example right now of that I looked into it, and it's 32 appearances is correct, right? 0 assists in the Premier League is correct. 3 goals in the Premier League is also correct, but Saba didn't mention it because it didn't suit the narrative. But if you actually look into it, he's only played 1,100 minutes before Sunday. So 4 GA, 3 goals and 1 assist over the season in 1,100 minutes is 4 goals or assists in 11 games of football, right? On a per 90 basis. So 37% conversion ratio on a full game play. So if I was making the argument that he's better than he is, I would log in. I wouldn't talk about the 32 appearances because they include a hell of a lot of 2 minutes and 3 minutes and 4 minutes at the end of games on the Thomas Frank. I would lock into the narrative of the minutes played because it suits my narrative more, but it suits Saba's narrative more to talk about the 32 appearances thing. So we're all guilty of looking at the data and manipulating it to find the situation that you want, the argument that you want.
Listen, in terms of I've just saw a comment about point scoring on YouTube. As far as Gray's concerned, I thought Gray was going to, from what I've seen, from basically I saw the Chelsea performance. I've seen little bits and pieces where he came in, and my thoughts were, how many other kids of 18, 19 years old are being thrown into a Premier League club before they're ready and doing okay, not disgracing themselves in 5 or 6 different positions? Cannot think of one. Can't think of anyone from Arsenal who's done it, Chelsea who's done it.
Sure.
Kobbie Mainoo couldn't play along the back 4. And
Harry Kane wasn't playing for Tottenham at the same age.
Sure, absolutely.
You can make that argument, right? You can make that argument if you want to, Lubo, to defend Mathys Tel, or you can make the argument that say Flowers does, which is, and it's a fine argument.
Yeah.
Which is, if you're good enough, if you're old enough, you're good enough. If you're good enough, you're old enough. And he's playing in the first team, therefore I'm going to treat him as a first team player.
Can I tell you a statistic?
I got all of this thrown. Hang on, let me just finish, Adam. I got all of this thrown at me, and I had pelters. I had absolute pelters. So, and I just thought, sod it. I will die on this hill now because I genuinely think he will make it, and I think he will be. And I said he would be established. I thought by the end of this season, next season, and he's getting there now. You're starting to see the breakthrough in terms of performances of the level that he should be doing to become a regular at Tottenham Hotspur. On other situations, I've had people make comments in virtually every show I've been in since I predicted 18 points. Since I predicted 18 points from the 12 games. Remember we had that prediction, Sean. You and Johnny went for 15 and Stel went for 12 from the 12 games before the Arsenal game when we were reviewing how many points. What was the statistic?
How many what? What was it?
How many points Spurs would get from the 12 games. And I've been reminded of that. And I've got to laugh, and I've got to say I was hugely over optimistic. There was a bit of a fan in me saying that. But I genuinely thought that Tudor would come in and do a much better job than he's done. Purely based on what I've seen him do in other countries. No,
I'm going to throw out a statistic now, Lubo, and I hope that people put this into a little bit of perspective, right? Do you know that when Michael Jordan retired from basketball, right, do you know that in the time that he was in the game, no one missed that hoop more than him in that time?
Really?
He missed
2 minutes.
More shots in his career in that timeline. He missed more shots than any other player that has ever graced the sport in that. In the time that he was in there, I don't know about since then, but look at the records that he did. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. So like conversions one way to look at it, right?
Yeah. So when it comes to
if you want to make the argument that Michael Jordan wasn't a very good basketball player, I think you're going to struggle to get any takers, right? But if you want to make the argument that he wasn't as good as people make him out to be, I'm sure there's data that you can cherry pick that would support the narrative, and that's the point I'm making, right? That's the point.
But exactly. That's statistics, isn't it?
It's like anyone can look at statistics, and with manipulation and like with enough effort, you can tell a story as long as you avoid the things that counter your argument and double down on the things that support your argument. And that's the way to go. Guys, listen, we've got 4 minutes left before I got to go over to Football Inc. I'm gonna redirect you all over. There's been over 1,000 people here for the most of the show. There's about 850 now. Please don't forget to smash the like, smash the subscribe. Got a couple of super chiddly chit chats that I need to get through, and then we're going to head over to see Johnny on Football Inc. Adam saying, "Can you send me the stream link?" I've already done that. Adam, big up to you, my man. Appreciate you very much indeed, moderator in chief. By the way, I'm surprised. I don't often I look at the chat when I can. But not always. So if there are moderators out there that are blocking people just because they disagree, then please don't do that. That's not what this channel's about.
But that's why you give us that. That's why you give us that responsibility to sort of back.
And I'm
you
horrified.
Up,
I'm horrified to
so
think that people are.
If you're in the game on a conversation,
I don't want to. I didn't know, but I don't want to know. I don't want to believe, but I hope that's not the case. That that people are being blocked for just having a different opinion. This is not what we're supposed to do here. Leroy, big up to Leroy. Big up to you, my man. Mate, great to meet you. Look, mate, you're a fucking huge geezer. You are a huge geezer. When you come up to me and you shook my hand, mate, I felt like I was shaking hands with an absolute, like you had like a fucking giant, like
Terry Crews.
Mate, it was my hand. I've got like an average size hand. It was swallowed up by the size of your. Whatever you do in life, mate, don't ever, like if you want to get into boxing or fighting or something, you could clobber someone, mate, with that fucking size of your hand, bro.
Hands like Pat Jennings.
Oh, mate, you can be a goalkeeper, mate. You can be or a fighter. Get into the UFC. You're an absolute unit of a man. I appreciate the. He also Leroy corrected me on the Magnum. It is Magnum, not Magnum. And he also told me that I can do my accents. I can do my accents without offending people. I've had permission. Big up to you, Leroy. Thank you very much, mate. Great to meet you, bro. Great to meet you, man. Big up to you. Roy Vikings coming as well, says, we gain absolutely nothing from protesting right now. Everything has its time. This isn't it if we're going to stay up. Yeah, that's where I'm at. That's where I'm at, right? Like, I understand people that have had enough with the ownership. I'm the same, right? Like, this current version of the ownership, I think, is poor, right? Really poor, making terrible decisions. But time and a place, and I don't know what energy are you going to actually create by singing songs about how shit the ownership is. I just wood for the trees. It doesn't mean that we all sing Kumbaya. It doesn't mean that we pretend that things are better than they are. I'm just saying, for me, anyone that's trying to spin the story that what we did on Sunday, what the guys organised on Sunday, and big up to everyone that did that, all of them. I think they did it for the right reasons, and I think the fans got together. It was just a shame that the players couldn't. Big up to you, Roy. Appreciate you, mate. More to talk about that. And Shawnee boy, Sean Hull, big up to you, mate. Hope you're okay. Ask Lubo. Oh, he's back. He's back. He disappeared. He's back now. Ask Lubo, where have fan protests got rid of their ownership by protest? Ashley only sold when price was right for him. That's the point I've been making for years to you, Lubo. You're on mute, mate. You're on mute.
I think the process...
You need to get a better lock on that back door.
On that back door? Okay. I think the protests at United, I think, had an effect. Up to then, the Glazers had sat on their 100% of the club for 20 years. And the protests built up and built up and built up, and they sold 25% and handed over the reins to Jim Ratcliffe of Ineos to run the football club, and that took the pressure off them. And now people have been criticising Ratcliffe rather than the Glazers. So yes, I think that did actually have a benefit. But listen, it's horses for courses. United is a big club, and they got a great fan base. They got much more, for me, a much more passionate fan base, unfortunately, than we have.
I don't know about that. I don't know about that.
I don't like
isn't
anyone
necessarily
calling out our
represented
fan
with
base.
everyone feeling the same way that you do.
I don't agree with people ever calling out our fan base.
We had 250,000 people that turned up to the celebration parade.
Yeah.
We had 25,000, 20,000, whatever it was, 15, 20,000 people that turned up hours before a blacked out coach walked past. I don't buy for a second that the fan base are not passionate at Tottenham. They just don't.
Listen, it's easy to be passionate when things are good. Let's be passionate when things are bad as well.
They are passionate. They were passionate on Sunday when things are terrible. They just don't subscribe to the same notion as certain people on YouTube who demand that they do things the way that they see it done.
Sean, I don't demand
not you, Lubo, but you come on now. There's a lot of people in the Tottenham fan base who feel a certain way, and they represent those sort of feelings in ways that are going to invoke, toxic reactions. And then for them to sit there and tell everyone, like I say, Stel apologized for me on this one, and I'm not going to double down on it. But like Stel tried to suggest that the reason why he was getting hate was because I was encouraging hate on him for having these crazy opinions that relegation is the best thing that ever happened without any logic to back it up or data to back it up. And that anyone that doesn't feel the same, the fan base is a fucking bunch of wankers. Like, if you're going to say those sorts of things, you're going to get heat. You're going to get heat. You're also going to turn off people that are in the middle of the road that you're trying to bring people into. Like, read the book, How to Win Friends and Influence People. Tell me what chapter in that book. The suggestion is call the people you're trying to persuade to join you are a bunch of wankers. Tell me what chapter that's in, because I didn't read it. Take ownership of what you say, take ownership of how you behave, and then tell me how it works out for you. And I think that's like, I don't know. It is what it is. Guys, we got to go. I'm 2 minutes late. Lubo, thank you so much for coming on. Appreciate you. Adam, thank you so much for coming on. Appreciate you. Massive shout out to Barnaby as well, who came on for an hour. I'm going to get Barnaby back on later. The link for his channel is in the description and in the title. Please do find Barnaby Slater _ and subscribe to him. Just very, very quickly, guys, also don't forget, we are sponsored by OK Jersey. You can get 8% off, and they change their clobber all the time. So please subscribe to them. Stay where you are, guys. In about 2 minutes' time, you're going to be redirected straight over to Football Link. Johnny and I are going to go over there and talk about all this stuff, and others as well, because there's a big weekend of football over on Football Link. Love you all. It's all fun. It's all games. Moderators, be more considerate of other people's opinions. Love you guys. Speak to you soon. And as always, come on, you Spurs.